Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jen Silva. I'm from the Office of Alumni Engagement. And on behalf of our office, as well as Development and Stonehill Athletics, I would like to thank you all for joining us today for our third installment of Coffee with the Coaches. Before we get underway, a few logistics for today's event. If everybody could please right now type into the chat box your full name, the location from which you're joining us, that's just for fun, and whether you're an alum or a student or a current parent, you can type that in the chat box. That will help us take attendance, but also helps us with organizing questions as they come in. We will keep all microphones muted during the presentation, but please feel free to type any questions that you may have into the chat box and we will address them as we get underway. And so without further ado, I would like to pass the microphone over to Assistant Director of Athletics and the moderator for today's Coffee with the Coaches, Doug Munson.
Thanks, Jen, and welcome, echo Jen's welcome everybody to our third Coffee with the Coaches. We're joined today by our Hall of Fame head coach, Karen Bowen, as well as seniors Sophia, Anderle, and Kevin Wheelock. Coach Bowen is in her 24th year at Stonehill, bringing the men's and women's cross country and track and field programs to national prominence. As I mentioned, inducted to the Ustf CCCA Hall of Fame last December. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And recently named had one of her teams named to the 40th anniversary moments by the NE10, and she's been named the outstanding individual in the NE10's 40th anniversary year this year. She's coached a combined 77 All-Americans over her career. Some of them have joined us here today, I can see, and obviously numerous Coach of the Year awards over her career. Coach, welcome, and if you wouldn't mind also talking a little bit about our two student athletes who are joining here today.
Thanks, Doug. Hi, everybody. Some of you I've seen here and there, but others I haven't seen for ages. I know, Emily, you've been in Ireland. Great to see you. Well, we brought on board Kevin Wheelock and Sophia Anderle, two of our captains for this year's team, which is, as you can imagine, a pretty challenging responsibility given the COVID situation. I think when we first came back onto campus, everybody was a little bit lost. Their footing was a bit off, but these guys have incredibly brought the freshmen on board, made them feel part of our culture. Sophia was introduced to me in high school by her coach. All I heard is she's a great athlete, incredible competitor, and even most importantly, a great person. She was track and field 800-meter runner and soccer, and I was wondering if she would be interested in becoming a distance runner, and she really put the work in and went from running a 220-minute race up into 5,000 and 6,000 meters. Made our top 7 her freshman year. Was one of the first freshmen to cross the line her freshman year. Went on to provisionally qualify for pretty close to it to the NCAA championships in the 3,000-meter steeplechase, which we joke is the easiest event on the track to be good at because nobody has the guts to do it. So needless to say, her career at Stonehill has been incredible. Her leadership, amazing. She's an RA. She's just one of those all-around great contributions to our, not only our athletic department, but the campus in general. Kevin Wheelock, also a senior captain on our team. Kevin's high school career was pretty strong. He was a heavily recruited athlete and has never disappointed us. Again, made the top 7 his freshman year. I think he ran 15:03 as an underclassman in the 5,000 meters, which is very impressive, down at William and Mary in Virginia. He has been in our top 7, both of them have, and represent us at the NCAA championship throughout their entire career here, and I'm sure had very high hopes and aspirations to do that again this year. So you can only imagine what it's like to be a senior captain in this environment and the task that we gave them to keep everybody up and running, so to speak. But thanks so much, 2 of my best. And we've had a lot of good kids come through the program, but I'm really appreciative that they're here today.
Thanks, Coach. And again, just to echo, feel free to enter any questions you may have for Coach in the chat for now. We will try to save some time at the end for a little bit more open forum if you want to speak and and talk to coach, and vice versa. We may turn the questions around to some of our alumni who have joined us today. So feel free to let the questions come at any time. But first off, Coach, can you just kind of talk to us what it's like right now? Obviously, I'm not sure what championship weekend you might be getting ready for normally here. Must be championship season. There's snow on the ground today. So
regionals. Regional
so just
championship.
take us through what's, how the team's doing, training, and getting ready for next semester.
Sure. When we first came on board, the freshmen were incredibly excited to be here. We talked a little bit before you guys came on. One of them said, I said, how is it? It must be so challenging, so difficult. And one of them said, to be honest with you, we don't know any different. And that was sort of the catalyst it was a wake-up call for me, because I was so focused on the returning athletes, what we couldn't do, the opportunities that were taken away because of COVID, that I kind of flipped the switch a little bit and said, pulled the seniors aside and the captains and basically said, you know what, we're going to dedicate this year to our freshmen, simply because we have a culture here at Stonehill on our teams, and that shouldn't have disappeared just because a virus was on campus. Returning kids, I think there was, for lack of a better word, kind of like an underlying depression on the team, because we were returning champions. We've gone to the NCAA championships, and that rug was kind of just pulled out from underneath them. And it did take a while to sort of get everybody thinking, like, what are we training for? So basically what I told them is, I don't coach for nothing. I don't come back just to keep the kids busy, if you will. I really sat down, I have a teaching background, and I really sat down and almost come up with a lesson plan, like, okay, what are we here for? What are we doing? What can we learn? And as an athlete myself, I got better each year because I was more experienced. So I said to them, like, why don't we put this whole season and learn how to do the things that we don't do well, learn to do those better without the input of competition. And that's a hard pill to swallow for some. It's a hard lesson to learn. But so much of competing is mental toughness, mental dedication. And a lot of we had some kids that kind of fear of competition, fear of failure. So we decided to take this semester and practice the skill sets mentally that we kind of sometimes don't have time to do because we're so busy practicing getting ready for the next competition. Our kids compete 3 seasons, cross country, indoor and outdoor. So there's always another competition in the background. Like any sport, we have our starting lineup. For us, it's our top 7. And I think sometimes people are practicing to sort of get in the top 7 and then forget what to do once they earn that kind of position. So, I came into it thinking, like, we're not going to waste this semester. We're going to take the time to do all the things that we haven't had time to do in the past. And a lot of our sport, the guys have a half an hour to be out there thinking. We tell them, you're putting your hand over a flame, and I'm trying to teach you not to pull it off the flame. And that's something that I think over the weeks has, basically they've kind of grasped it. Because they're responsible. Once that gun goes off in our sport, I can't blow the whistle and say, hey, listen, that you didn't work that play the way we wanted it to, everybody back, and we'll start over again. I have to watch it unfold. And I'm always wondering what's in your head right now. So one of the things we've really put the focus on is what's in your head right now. And when that thought comes in there, how are you going to translate that into a competition when you finally get the opportunity to do so?
Great. 2 student athletes. I start with you, Sophia. Just kind of tell us from your perspective what kind of it's been like, getting out and running, as a team. Your kind of your pods, so to speak. You talk about what practices are looking like right now for you guys.
So for the first 2 weeks, we didn't have organized practice. Athletics hadn't started up, and we were all just kind of running on our own. We had no idea who the freshmen were. And then we started meeting in pods. And though it's very, very different, we run 50 meters behind each other on the rugby and the Skyhawk fields. It still just brings so much positivity. So I'm so glad we're able to practice now. So we go in our pods, groups of 5, and we have to do we run 20 meters behind each other in a line for our warm-ups, and then we do spaced out drills, and we do the workouts, but we're still able to cheer each other on and to push each other in the workouts. I definitely think it's been a great time to get to know the freshmen better. Usually you're have a crazy schedule, so we've been able to we've had more time to spend time with the freshmen, which is cool. We definitely miss the track table, the dinners together. We're able to eat 2 or 3 per table in the dining commons, so we'll do small groups in our pods, but other than that, that's definitely something that we're missing this year. But we're just really grateful that we can meet twice a week and work out together.
Kevin, kind of same thing for you, on the men's team's perspective, and maybe, just kind of talk about some of the steps that have been taken, on campus to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, so definitely agree with what Sophia said. I think for our team especially, we didn't have preseason this year, which is something that certainly sets the year off for everyone, kind of gets the freshmen included because we do things off campus and stuff. But this year we obviously couldn't do that. So that kind of, got everyone in kind of in a low mood at the beginning of the year, to be honest. So coming back from that has definitely been taking a while, like Coach Bowen said. But yeah, on campus, obviously everyone's wearing masks, everyone's social distancing. You do everything you can to keep yourself safe, keep everyone around you safe. Everyone understands that that's more important than really anything else. That's safety is the first step, so.
Great, Coach. Question from an alum, Joe Tucker. Just wants to know, he just ran the New York City virtual marathon in 4:18. What goals can a 55-year-old runner have? And do you see a spiritual connection in runner? Obviously, your sport's a lifelong sport that, you can kind of do for a long time. Just kind of talk about that, how that can kind of extend beyond college.
Well, I think in any sport, any athlete, young, old, I remember at one point in time waking up and saying, am I only training not to get any slower than I already have? And kind of trying to find goals. But at the end of the day, most runners sort of like the challenge. Some of my best athletes are also my best students. I think they sort of strive for perfection. And you have to sort of, what I did was introduce new things. I remember setting a goal to, I remember trying to break 5:20 in the mile when I turned 40, and thinking that would be something that would be a nice goal, and laughing at the fact that wow, I used to be so much faster, and now I look back at that 5:20 and I think, oh my goodness, maybe I could try to run a half mile and try to break 5:20. So there's 2 schools of thought. Do you try to train not to get any slower than you already have, or do you pick new events? I think the marathon, I've done a few of them, and you can see my personality. I don't have the most patience in the world. That was a long time to be out there, but I did it to reestablish goals. And I think a marathon it's kind of just the accomplishment of finishing it, but it's hard. You sort of have to, kind of, do I want to run in this many places across the country? Do I want to run a marathon in another country? I mean, there's all kinds of different goals in our sports you can do. The bottom line is, I think an athlete's in your soul, and you just find ways to compete. Marathon's a tough one, though. I don't know how anybody does it over the age of 50, so kudos to you.
Great. Another question for the student athletes. You talked about you kind of competing and what that picture looks like right now for you guys. Talk about campus life and what that is like day to day right now. As we work through this, we're entering our last few weeks here on campus before Thanksgiving, and then there'll be obviously a break. Just again, start with Sophia.
So we have a mix of online in-person classes. If you're in an in-person class, all the desks are 6 feet apart and you wipe down your desk when you get to class. Then you have some high flex classes where the class is so big that you can't all be in one classroom at a time. So you'll go once a week, and the other day the professor sets up Zoom so the people, you'll Zoom into the class. And then a lot of the meals are to go at the different eateries on campus. You online order your meals. You can walk into some places, and there's like limited seating options. You're supposed to wear masks everywhere except for in your room and when you're eating. You don't have to wear a mask on campus if you're running, which is nice because running in a mask is very difficult. And it's been a really interesting experience to do online classes. Some just meet completely online, so you meet at the time you're supposed to meet for an hour and 15 minutes lecture. And then other times it's asynchronous, so the professors will post videos and you'll watch them on your own time. So I have a mix of those this semester, which is interesting. It's definitely been an opportunity to focus on classes, and we have a lot of free time now. I've never had an off season, so there's definitely time to get your homework done and then also watch movies. So that's also been a cool part of this semester.
Yeah, but maybe expand on that a little bit, just the off-season aspect, and how you guys are kind of working to fill that time. Obviously doing it in a safe manner, but what are some of those off the course, out of the classroom things that you guys are kind of trying to do to try to pass the time, so to speak, in this off season that you guys aren't used to?
Yeah, so it's like you said, it's very different this year, obviously. I think the first couple, like I said, the first month or so, we were really trying to figure out, what we can do, what's safe, which is still kind of hard to work around because, the first things first, you got to keep everyone safe. You can't just be going out places with a giant group. That can't happen like we used to be able to do. So I think off campus, we'll do our best to meet with the freshmen, the underclassmen, in different groups at dinner, because you got to keep it to a pretty small group. Other things, maybe if you go out to Daddy's Dairy down the street here, get some ice cream with some people, just things close by, kind of keeping it low key, keeping it safe, keeping low numbers. Yeah, it's kind of things like that because there's not too much. So.
Great. Coach, a question from Dave Kerrigan, alum. He qualifies himself as a quote-unquote older runner, former sprinter, now turned distance runner, run 2 half marathons in 1:43 time frame, as he's rightfully pleased with that. He struggled with injuries, torn ACL, torn calf. Do you find varying training is the trick, or simply accepting that age is setting in? I should have proofread that a little bit, but just talk about how, some injury prevention stuff that you guys do for your team.
So basically, one of the things that I've implemented in our program that we didn't do years ago, I grew up in the era of just run more often, and it basically beats your body down. I'm a huge advocate of weight training. And we've been very fortunate to have a beautiful sports complex built. Back in the day, we did core and stability training. I think I had to teach that 2 mornings a week at 7 a.m. But I think that sometimes runners forget that they're athletes. And that's something we really stress. Are you a runner or are you a racer? There's 2 different categories. Some people just like to get out there and run. Personally, I didn't necessarily like to get out there and run. I liked to race. And that gave me a sense of purpose. So as I was trying to get to be a better racer, I went back to myself as just being an athlete, because I didn't get into the sport of track and field until very late. In terms of I didn't do it in high school, it wasn't offered. So I always look at my student athletes as athletes first, and our sport happens to be how fast can you run in a circle, which sounds very simplistic, but every sort of aspect comes into it, guts, and a lot of people don't work on that. They just work on the running. So the first thing I tell people as they're aging, or kids that started running in 7th grade and they're coming into college and they've already been kind of beaten down for 4 or 5 years, is look at yourself as an athlete instead of a runner. And Trish is on here. She can attest to the fact that they're basketball players, but they do other things other than just play basketball. And I think our sport is incredibly guilty of not understanding that there's so much that goes into it: mobility, knee lift, mental tenacity, staying power. So all those things that every sport works on, we work on too. People that aren't in this sport often say to me, so what do you do? Just teach the kids how to run. And I just joke and say, yeah, that's all I do. But there's, like any other sport, if you treat yourself like an athlete, you'll realize how much athletic performance comes into. My best runners are great athletes. I like kids that come into our program that played a ton of sports. When someone says all they've done from 7th grade is run, I pause sometimes. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's just more likely they're going to be injury prone. Body can only handle so much. So look at yourself as an athlete first, and an athlete who happens to participate in the sport of running.
Thanks, Coach. Coach, expand on that a little bit. When you're recruiting, what do you look for in runners? And I always marvel at just the fact that your team in the championship season always just tends to turn it on, and be it cross country, obviously during any 10 championships, always seem to mean more to your team than maybe some of the other teams, and you guys turn that up. Just talk about what you look for and how that builds to the championship success that you guys have had.
Yeah, back when I first started coaching, our sport in some regards is easier to recruit, in other regards it's hard to recruit, because we can look at someone's best time, best mile time. So I thought when I first started coaching that if I just brought in fast people, we'd have great teams. And I often reflect back at the first year on the men's team. I had the best recruiting class I had ever had. I brought in 12 guys that were just very good athletes. It was the worst 3 years I had coached. They weren't connected. They didn't have team chemistry. Each one had their own little swag. And then I started thinking, like, what am I doing that's not meshing well? And I gradually changed my kind of recruiting philosophy over the years. Some people are just a one-stop wonder, if you will. So they'll put down their best time ever. But one of the things I look for is, number one, when was that done? Was it done on a who cares type of a competition, or was that done when it mattered? That shows me a gamer. Some people are great practice athletes, and then when things get tough, they sort of have a hard time with that. That's our responsibility as coaches to teach their brains how to compete, but it's a harder thing to get across to an athlete. It's much easier to train someone physically than it is to train them mentally. So if I see someone that has a lot of physical capability, that's awesome, but the hardest part for me is teaching them over the years is not to be afraid of failure or get that competitive edge. So I look to see when they have run their best performances. You can also judge like people that overtrain. There's a lot of overtraining in our sports. So they're running their absolute best at the beginning of the season and they crumble by the end. Is that mental or is that physical? And then you just have to go and, a lot of times you just have to see them do it. I don't often say what meets I'm going to. I like to see how people react to their teammates. I love watching kids watch their team's relays. You'll learn a lot from your athletes when a relay is going on, because relays, if they don't care because they're not competing, how are they acting when their event isn't being contested? That shows me camaraderie and team, being a team player, because it's a very individual sport mentality in a group environment. And we're a team. I've never had one athlete win the championship for us, ever. It just doesn't go that way. I see Nicole Borowski, Laura Child, Mario, a lot of the kids on here were my #1 athletes. But unless they had a team behind them to continue that score, it doesn't matter. You can't win our sport with one person. So I look for mental toughness. I look for, do people love to just run, or are they racers? I, again, reflect back to, I like soccer players, basketball players. People are always calling me, apologizing the fact that they didn't begin their running career until junior year. And I'm like, that's awesome. a lot of times they got into the sport off season, had some success at it, got hooked, and go from there. Biomechanics is another thing that you have to really be cognizant of in our sport. If you don't have good biomechanics and your body doesn't move fluidly, you better be really mentally tough. And I've had that too. I've had kids where I'm like, wow, they don't deserve to be getting what they're getting based on the way their body looks, but they're tougher than any other kid on the team. So I would say mental toughness is the number one thing I recruit, secondary to what their times are.
Great. Kevin and Sophia, I'd like to ask you about culture. Coach has touched on it a few times, and I'm going to start with you, Kevin. Talk to me about Ustf and what that means. I know the men have really embraced that over the years, and how has that built for you guys to help build the culture of the men's side of things in the running teams?
Yeah, so Ustf means a whole lot of things, I'd say, to our team. I think it's a culture that's been here for a very long time. I don't think we've started saying Ustf before races, like in the huddles. Not for the entire time Coach was here, but I know Coach has built that culture, and her athletes have, in the past, they came up with, we need a saying, we need a slogan, and they came up with Ustf because of Stonehill and Ustf, obviously. But so what it really means to us is, I'd say accountability is the big thing. We know that like a day like today is a perfect example. It's very snowy. It's not a nice day outside. No one really wants to be out there running, but it's accountability to each other, because we know, like, all right, we're out there right now. We're cold. It's windy. We don't really want to be doing it, but we think in our heads, like, Ustf, like our teammates are going to be doing this too. So we know to have that motivation. I think especially in the off season, like knowing that our teammates are doing the training and knowing that we trust each other and we're accountable to each other. I think that's what Ustf is truly, because we know that we're always going to be working hard no matter what. And we're going to train smart, train hard. And we know our teammates have our backs. And I think, like, on top of just competition, Ustf is like mentally keeping each other in check, like academics wise, making sure we're, getting good grades. Because I think one of the most important things for runners is, like Coach said, mental toughness. And that doesn't just come out of nowhere. You need to build that, not just in running, but outside of running. So build your confidence in school, in like extracurricular activities, whatever you're doing. You want to build your confidence in other ways, and that can come into running. So I think that's what Ustf is.
Sophia, you're part of a women's program that's won 19 of the last 20 NE10 championships, 14 straight, recognized by the NE10. Talk about what that means to you, and just, I know it's important for you guys, and how that's kind of built your culture, help build your culture, and try to, to fight to keep those runs going.
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing to be a part of this team. I think one of the things that stands out the most to me is just our support of each other. We'll be cheering each other on at practice, in classes, academically, and then also in races. Like, my favorite photo is one of our teammates like reaching out her hand back to get a girl to come up with her in the middle of the race. You feel like absolute terribleness. And we're just supporting each other the whole time. It's not competition, but it's building each other up. And I think that it's also like a lot of intention. We do everything and we're trying to become better. Everything we do has a purpose. So we're trying to become better, stronger individuals, athletes, teammates, always like striving to be the best we can be, and also dig deeper and become more confident in ourselves, and also being supportive of our teammates and encouraging them to be the best that they can be. And I think also another thing that's really helped with this losing our whole season was the fact that we've always just been very intentional, and we're like, this is the only race that we have. So just take it and be grateful, be glad you can run today. Something could happen tomorrow and you could not be able to run. So it's just very intentional, which is really an amazing community as well.
Great, Coach. Talk about your induction to the USTF CCA Hall of Fame last year. And obviously there's a number of people on this call that were a part of that. And, you go to a convention, you're amongst your peers and stuff at that time, but now, you're kind of amongst the people help get you there. What's that been like for you, and maybe, a reaction to that induction with some of your alumni who have been part of this program?
Well, first off, it was overwhelming. I was actually with Dean, our athletic director, when the mail came in, and I didn't have my glasses on, which I probably didn't need back in the day of Laura Charles and Mario Frioli and all those that were basically the first big recruits that ever came into the program. And I thought I was reading, we get all these NCAA things and coaches' emails, and I just thought it was kind of an invitation to go to the convention. And then I saw something about the Hall of Fame, and usually I have to get extra tickets, and I thought it was about the tickets. Then it said congratulations, and I was like, I'm looking at the name on the envelope, I'm redoing it. When I say it's not even I didn't believe it. I was sitting in my office. The first thing I said to my husband was like, I'm so embarrassed, and he was shocked at that. And just because I'm in such awe of coaches across the country, and maybe that's why the program is somewhat successful, is because I never coach cocky. I'm always coaching like I have something to prove because there's other people out there that are better. I felt that way as an athlete. So I was overwhelmed. I joke about the fact that every time I'm stressed out, I go to TJ Maxx. That's what I did. I closed down the office and I went to TJ Maxx. And I was hoping nobody saw this yet. My phone was starting to blow up. But it was overwhelming. And it was a good time to reflect, because there are programs that are more successful. We've never won a national championship. We're always around, but we've never won one. And I then kind of transferred the sort of why me's into why not. Here we are, a small little Division II program. Stonehill's awesome, but it's a hard place to recruit for. Kids have to be really smart. It's expensive, it's small, so you have like an audience that you're trying to pick from. But somewhere along the line, for 23 years, we've managed to, as afraid as I was of losing and can we keep this going, we've managed to keep it going. So I went from kind of like, wow, do I deserve this, to what a great group of athletes I've had over 23 years to sort of always be around. We got people like Sophia, who played soccer and ran the 800, who created and transformed herself into this phenomenal athlete. So then the pride factor started coming in. Laura Charles graduated, she was my first recruit 20 years ago in 2000. And I remember trying to convince her to come to Stonehill, and we didn't have a track. I didn't realize we weren't supposed to use the indoor track, because that was at the time for recreation. Nobody told me this prior to my taking the job, but so it just kept building. Like Mario came in and we built on him, and it just kept building and building and building. And the lesson that I learned is people are watching, people are noticing. So you work all this and you're so caught up in the things you have to do better that I didn't realize that people had noticed that. So that was the compliment that I took out of it. Like, wow, somebody noticed Stonehill College, because generally speaking, if I call someone from far away, the first question they ask is, where is Stonehill? If you call and you're from Brown, or you call and you're from BC, they know where that is. But a lot of times people don't know where Stonehill is. And I was like, wow, they know where it is. Like, we are put on the map. So I think it was a testimony to the support that the college gave our sport, because at some schools it's sort of like a also participated type sport. I give huge shout out to the kids who actually bought into my sales pitch 20 years ago, because there wasn't anything to build on back then. So I kind of flipped gears with it. I was overwhelmed. I was embarrassed at first. I I felt undeserving because we had never won a national championship. But in the end, I was like, wow, we took kids that were just basic human beings in a college that's just a small Division II college in New England. And we hung around and they kept coming and they kept believing in it. So it was really kind of a celebration for the entire community at the college. That's how I kind of was able to wrap my brain around it. But it's still to this day, like, how did that happen? I thought they picked it out of a hat or something. But I was very blessed.
Great, thanks, Coach. I know we touched on it a little bit, but can you just talk about when this comes from parents, Deb and Jay, Mama from Dartmouth. When are the runners required to wear a mask while training right now and exercise? Can you just kind of go over, what the requirements are right now?
Sure. Any place on campus, masks are mandatory. The only time that my athletes have masks off if we're out on the fields and back of the campus is a big field and back of WB Mason Stadium. We call it the Skyhawks Loop. We have it mowed down. It's a 1,000-meter loop. And then over at the rugby fields. So there's basically nobody else on there. When we start our workouts, we kind of put cones so that the kids can do repeat 800s or repeat miles. The difference being they're not doing it in their packs. They're just doing it, based on internal motivation. So that's been back to that, how do we make them mentally tougher? It's very easy to compete in our packs when we're packed up, but now they're doing it not knowing what the other times are of the groups that they're kind of separated from. So the only time we don't wear the mask, as soon as the intervals are done, the mask goes back up. If they're warming up, the mask goes back up. If they're anywhere on campus, the mask goes back up. But the only times we have the mask down is on those fields when we're a minimum of 14 feet apart.
Great. A question from Megan Byrne, also a parent. She just wanted to say thanks for all the Zoom calls with the team in the spring and the summer, and including the new freshmen. Anything you can tell us about the indoor season, and kind of what the status is there?
Yeah, the indoor season is kind of like, can you tell us what you're gonna do for vacation next summer? Everything's sort of, it's a wait and see. My athletes I have the utmost respect for the fact that they're just kind of staying in the moment, living for the day. We've kind of accepted the fact that we're training in a different environment, possibly for something later in their athletic careers. But at this point in time, indoor track is what it is. They're big invitationals and enclosed environments. And we're just kind of trying to wait. I have full confidence in the Northeast 10 and our athletic department that first and foremost, they're going to keep our kids safe. If they deem it safe and the kids can be in that environment, so be it. If the season for some reason is compromised, I have to just accept the fact that they did it to keep us safe. So I wish I knew. I wish I had that little insight into what's going to happen with this virus. But the virus right now is a little bit in control. And we're just kicking back at it as best we can. But my priority right now is to continue to train these kids to get ready for what might come our way without really knowing what that might bring, unfortunately.
Great. Question from cross-country alum Betsy. Just want to say congrats on what you've made of the Stonehill cross-country and tech program. She goes back to Coach Barry Morris in the 93-94 area as a captain. Says her best memories of Stonehill are from cross country and has a nephew looking at Stonehill. Are they having campus tours during these COVID times?
Yeah, hey, welcome aboard. I was probably running on the campus back when Barry was there. I used to work at Morton Hospital in cardiology, and I used to stop on my way home and run in the campus. I probably saw you running back in the day. In terms of, I don't know, repeat, what exactly, Doug, repeat the question.
Just, and maybe we can expand on this, just kind of what the recruiting process for you looks like right now, under the COVID restrictions, and her specific questions with regards to are there campus tours going on campus right now?
Sure, I intentionally slowed down my early recruiting simply because the high school athletes, when I first started recruiting, they were just so off balance because their cross country season was up in the air. We didn't know exactly what's going to be happening at Stonehill. I'm like floored that we have such low rates and we're still doing such a good job at it. So my recruiting kind of was off to a slower start, just intentionally so that people could find their balance a little bit. We have a link that it's an incredible virtual tour. We're just now starting to do some on-campus visits, but they're very, very organized and intentional. The campus is under secure, basically just staff, faculty, and students. So it's done on an invitation basis everywhere, and all the links and any information that needs to be had, you can certainly get it. Just write me an email. And I sent out all our recruits the virtual tours, and they did such a good job that really gained a lot of interest in the campus. I think one of the best recruiting points for Stonehill right now is that we did this. I have friends that coach all over the country, and we're doing just a better job than most people. So as crazy as it sounds, that's a big recruiting tool. I mean, granted the success of the program, but it's only going to be successful if we stay safe and we can reopen. So from my perspective, the fact that Stonehill has done such an amazing job, I think should be a huge reason why people look at it. And the fact that they're limiting visits and it has to be done in such an intentional manner speaks volumes about the fact that they're not just interested in enrollment, they're interested in enrollment and keeping the present class safe. I think the kids you are going to get are equally as important as the ones you already have. So that's the way I've been sort of dealing with the recruiting. We're trying to make both parties safe. But the recruiting is going on. Programs are kind of doing the best they can. And I just think that I'm going to sell for the rest of the year that we're doing it better than anybody, as far as I'm concerned.
Sophia popped off camera, so I'll direct this at you, Kevin. Talk about the value on all those Zoom calls last spring and during the summer to keep you guys kind of tied together and, as team, and how you guys are able to stay unified through those.
The Zoom calls, like Coach Bowen says, they can get pretty awkward. That's for sure. Especially with a bunch of new freshmen who you don't even know yet. Like you've barely met them. Like maybe I saw them on the recruit trip one day, but it's just awkward for especially them. They're just like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know who's this Coach Bowen? Like what does she want me to do right now? And the expectations were like, try to get out there, try to, like Coach says, be an athlete in that time, do what you can, stay in shape, because that's just what being an athlete is. You don't need to just run, do other things. But I think that's what the Zooms really did for everyone, just trying to get everyone together as best as possible. Yes, they could be awkward at times, but just simply being able to talk, especially having Coach there to really let the freshmen know that there is no pressure right now, because it was such a just unprecedented time. So the Zoom calls certainly helped keep us together and keep some connections. I know that the guys team would have just the guys Zoom call over the summer. It would just be us and the guys, and that I think helped the freshmen get a little more perspective on what to expect. So yeah.
Sophia, anything to add on that? Just the sense of normalcy probably those provided you guys, while you were remote, and to be able to keep that unity together.
Yeah, it was really fun. We got to play some games and do some trivia together. So that was really nice and also just to see their faces. We see each other a lot. We usually have 2-hour practices, maybe lift in the morning. So we see each other at least twice a day typically. And so going remote when we were all at home, it was kind of very different and a little isolating. So it was really nice to just see everyone's faces and be able to joke around. Definitely took some adjusting, but it was really nice to get to see everyone. And also it was kind of nice because we got to meet the freshmen a little bit earlier than we normally would. We didn't have preseason, so we didn't get to spend a lot of time with them during then, but beforehand we knew semi what their faces looked like. So that was really also a cool opportunity to meet the freshmen early.
Great. Coach, just to kind of wrap things up, and before we kind of open it up, if there's anybody who wants to kind of say hello, if you want to talk to anybody specifically that's here, but We were joined today, our alum Elizabeth Johnson Matola in Italy. We just wanted to give a shout out to her for joining us from overseas for today's call, and Coach, if you had any message for her.
Hi, Liz. Can I come visit? Can I come visit you? You've been there. How many years have you been there now?
15.
Wow. When you first went there, I thought, oh, I wonder how long she's going to stay. And then you fell in love with it automatically. And Emily's in Ireland, correct? Emily, you still in Ireland?
Yep, I'm still over here.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool that you've stayed in touch. I'm kind of fascinated that you're here, the both of you. I see Emily here and there. You know, we communicate because she's a more recent grad. What was your year, Liz? What year did you graduate?
2003. So
2003.
feels like forever ago. Yeah, I know.
It was. And things, you know, it's really funny. Things were sort of the same and different at the same time. The facilities are sort of more upgraded. And Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the athletes probably like me. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, probably not. You know, that 50-50 thing. It was really funny because Liz, you know the culture, and I was, you know, trying to get my women's team to be like really, really tough. And I literally drove down to Philadelphia when the weather was terrible and to see my grandchildren, and I'm here now. And I was taking a conference call earlier in my granddaughter's bedroom, and I looked up on the wall, and my daughter has this on her wall in her bedroom. It says, "Let her sleep, for when she wakes, she will move mountains." And it's really funny that, like, one of the things that was the most challenging back then was trying to take girls, and we use the expression all the time, badasses, and turn them into badasses. And you were there during that transition phase where you go from tough, you know, soft love to tough love. And I think of that transition and where you guys were when you came and when you left. So, you know what? It's people like you that were the start of all of this, and people like Emily and Nicole that graduated much later than you did, but you're the ones that this whole foundation, and that's really responsible for where it is now. So thank you so much for so many reasons.
Oh, geez. I probably Laura and Christina are on the call, but I still think of it all the time when we were working out, we were doing a workout in lot 17, and it was a night like you guys are having there now, like cold, dark, I don't know, it was probably December or January. And you said to us, you said, like, you know, just look around, like never again in your life will you have this many, you know, men and women practicing with you, like to work out with you at 4:30 at night in the dark, in the cold. And it's so true. You know, I think about that all the time. I'm still coaching here at our high school, and I tell the kids that all the time, like, come on, you look around, you actually have friends to run with right now. It's really hard when you get older. You have to do it on your own all the time. So yeah, so thank you. I still think of that all the time. So. And
I still say that all the time. Someday you're going to be coming out of work at 5 o'clock and nobody's going to care about you or what shape you're in. Yeah. So take advantage of those opportunities. You know, it's so true. But some of you guys, to look back, my goodness, like I look at my own kids, how old was Molly? She was like 5.
The baby.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are 27, 34, and 36 now. It's really just been a crazy ride.
I remember her she was on a pogo stick all the time at practice, indoor track. Molly, she was just always on a pogo.
Yeah, we literally thought she's gonna literally graduate from college like this. She's gonna be one, because it basically, how else do you keep your kids entertained, right? We didn't have the track. Yeah. So we used to Carl used to bring her basketball practice 2 days a week, and she'd be in the room saying, "Is today the blue day or the purple day?" She was so into it. And that's what the kids used to do. I'm like, "Can you entertain her while I do this?" And you'd see like 200, and she started off being able to do 10, and then it was like 212, 213. She doesn't have it anymore. She doesn't have it anymore. Oh. No, she's 27. She doesn't have the pogo stick anymore.
Oh, you never know when you might need it. No. That's so fun. Tell her we said hello. Yeah.
I will. But it's been quite the legacy. My God. And Mario's on here too, class of 2002, right? First year I took over the men.
Mario, I think it's 2004. He's older than me.
2004. Okay, that's the first. He was the first on the first men's team that I coached. Because I remember going to a meeting and being the only female coaching male sports and having the commissioner say, "Okay, gentlemen, take a seat." And I did. And then the second year he said, "Okay, gentlemen, take a seat," and I did. And the third year he said, "Gentlemen, take a seat," and I stayed up, and I stayed standing. And I remember kind of turning it into a joke, but at that point in time, there was 3 of us in a room. And that's one of my most poignant memories of that first men's class, and having everybody say, "How did the men feel about having a female coach?" And my answer was, nobody's ever asked me how I felt having a male coach. If you have a good coach, does it really matter? But trying to convince that first guys class of that was kind of interesting. But here we are, 23 years later. It seemed to work out. Hi, Zach. So one of the things we're most proud of, we last count, Doug, had 32 alumni that we're currently coaching. So I'd be curious to see how many people on this call are coaching in some capacity. I know I have a freshman on my team that Zach coaches right now.
Yep. Connor Hughes.
Yeah, I think we're up to 32 or 33 between cross country and track and field, which is pretty amazing.
Wow.
Well, Coach Langkow, tell us, what are some of the things you've pulled from your days running for Coach Bowen with your team?
Oh man, I don't know where to start. Quite a few things, honestly. Everything, some things that were mentioned by some of the student athletes on there. As far as team culture goes, that was always one thing that I was kind of interested in, that Coach Bowen always kind of talked about, because she's been there for so long, and there's just been literally hundreds of student athletes that are going through the program. And with a lot of different personalities and a lot of different strengths and weaknesses, and trying to keep things, I think Coach does a really good job with balancing the culture at one level, regardless of kind of the personalities, and kind of catering the team a little bit. One thing that she always said, that I know that I've said to athletes now personally, is just, I can't want it more than you. And that's always something that has stuck with me as far as coaching, and understanding that sometimes the coach and the athlete aren't on the same page. And it's important that you kind of empower the athlete to want to do it themselves. Because like Coach said earlier on, there's no timeout that you can call. Once the gun goes off, that's it. You just have to watch it unfold. And there's been plenty of times where I've wished I could blow a whistle and call timeout in the middle of a mile and say, well, let's go back to this move that just happened. But we know that it doesn't happen that way. And anyway, just thank you for the time. And it's been great to hear from not only Coach, but some of the current student athletes, and seeing some familiar faces as far as some other alums that are in here too. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Zach, I never realized I had quite that many expressions until Liz Hannon, I think, is on the call. Liz gave me a book, a hardcover book. It's, I think, 25 pages, and in the front is each chapter, and each expression that evidently I say pretty often. And Nicole's dumped on me a bunch of times, like, you've heard me say this before, and they'll whisper each other, I've never heard her say that before. And evidently there are some things that I say over and over again, to the point that it is the best gift I've ever received as a coach. It will be one expression, for instance, my one that's not in there, I don't think, is you can't unsalt the soup. In other words, it's already done, let's move on from it. Liz had somehow come up with every expression that she was heard me say on a regular basis, and what that really meant. And it was probably one of the most emotional gifts I had ever received. So from the bottom of my heart. That was awesome.
That was a total team effort, Coach. I did not come up with that myself.
Well, you pulled it together.
Yeah, well, you deserve it. I mean, from all of us here, like every quote that you said comes with a life lesson. I don't think you realize the impact that you have on your student athletes.
Thanks, Liz. Sometimes you only hear, when it doesn't go well. So that was validation for some of the things that do go well. And one of the things I've learned from my athletes is in our quest for perfection, sometimes we only tell them what we think they need to improve upon. And one of the things that I've learned as a more mature coach is don't be hesitant to tell them the things that they're doing well, not only when they score for you, but I'm very proud this year, and I said that in the opening, of how my seniors and the returning kids really stepped up to the plate in such a difficult surrounding. And I literally called the guys out with the Luxus Best, Kevin, if you remember, week number 2, when I was yelling to turn the frowns upside down, that it's not just Luxus Best when things are going well. You're a Stonehill Skyhawk, regardless of what the circumstances are that are surrounding you. And just because you got thrown a bad deal, you can't not be a Skyhawk. And I think it made all of us pause. It made me pause as a coach, like, what am I doing this year with COVID? Are we supposed to just be like kind of college sitting, and what we can get out of it? And I learn as much from you guys as you do from me. I told you, Sophia, one day, I was like, you know what? Thank you for having practice today, because I felt like the COVID blanket, I call it, just like got up one morning and the COVID blanket was laying all over me. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had to go to practice that day, I probably would have spent the rest of the day under the COVID blanket. A little bit of kind of settled down, that kind of thing. So it's kind of like the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, everybody that's on this call has some sort of connection to Stonehill. Some more specifically cross country and track and field. But at the end of the day, it takes a village, as they say. So I'm so appreciative. Especially for the book, Liz. What's your favorite expression, Liz?
I think it's as I always say, because you normally, like, you called out Nicole for this, but you would start every story with, as I always say, and then you would just say a random expression, and we had never heard of it before. And that's where a lot of the quotes in the book come from. Like, you would say something once, and then we would just keep saying it for the rest of the year.
Coach, one
I
quick
guess you
question.
have to learn to laugh at yourself. What's that, Doug?
I know we're up against 1 o'clock here, but one quick question came in from alum Dave Kerrigan. I'd like to just hear about how the track and field facilities have improved at Stonehill. He ran in the mid-90s. The indoor facility was the only indoor facility that they shared with other sports and had to practice at 9:30 at night. Mm-hmm. Outdoor, they ran at Oliver Ames. So maybe just kind of paint a picture for some of the alums who don't, know what we have now for a facility.
Sorry, guys, this is a deal breaker. I mean, back in the day, it was like going to the prom with jeans on, right? Now we have a prom dress to go in. It's unbelievable. I didn't miss what I didn't have. When we didn't have the track, that's the only way I knew how to coach. We were climbing fences at Southeastern Regional when Carl was a coach over there and couldn't get the gates open. I think Mario, we drove to 3 different facilities one day, trying to get a place to work out, and he had qualified for a big meet and we couldn't even find a track to do it on. It's a deal breaker. Just to be able to walk outside onto a facility instead of trying to find one each day is amazing from a recruiting standpoint. It's just a beautiful facility. It makes me so proud. And it also kind of lets me tell the athletes that some of our school records still are from the days when we didn't have a facility. So, like, don't use anything as an excuse. The track doesn't make great athletes. Great athletes get to run on the track. And but it is fascinating to have this facility. I still walk over there some days and I'm amazed because it was very, very challenging without it. So it's a deal breaker for me. It really is. Great,
Coach. Anything else from the group? I don't want to cut anybody off. Anyone else wanted to step in and say anything? Great. Well, if not, then I guess I'll just turn it over quickly. Jen Silva, if you any messages from your department before we depart for the day.
Yes, great. Thank you, everyone. This was wonderful. And we really love having so many alums from across the world really join us today. And I would just put a plug in for some upcoming programming. Obviously, Coffee with the Coaches will resume in a couple of weeks. And we have Stay at Homecoming, which is a full slate of programs starting next Thursday, running through that Sunday, so November 5th through the 8th. You would have received an email in your inbox earlier this week, but there'll be another one going out today. So keep an eye out, and we'd love to have you register for some events. One of the highlighted events for those of you who were student athletes will be a State of Athletics panel, which will be Friday, November 6th at noon. So keep your eyes out, and any questions that you might have about either our Coffee with the Coaches or any other programs, feel free to email the alumni office. Super easy. It's just alumni@stonehill.edu. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Coach Bowen, Sophia, Kevin. Thank you, everyone.
And come to a track meet when we finally get to have one.
Absolutely.
Bye, everybody. Great seeing you all.
Thank you. Bye, Coach.
Bye.
Hi, Coach. Thanks.
See ya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.